All right, ladies and gentlemen, got Keith Marshall here. Do you consider yourself a Georgia legend? I know you're not going to do that, but do you consider yourself a Georgia legend?
No, I don't. I think I had a good start to the career, and then things happen as they happen. So
hey, luck is luck. We'll get to it in a little bit. I don't really I don't do any major intros when it comes to interviews. We just get right after it. I was doing some kind of research on you earlier, and Georgia has kind of fell in love, and not just Georgia, but kind of the SEC in general has fell in love with track times. Mm-hmm. Like it is a prerequisite nowadays. If you're going to play at Georgia as a skill position, you better be running track in the spring. And dude, you were like one of the first that was like known for being a track guy. You were a 10.6 100 dude. Like yep. you are now Georgia speed. What is required now to play at Georgia? So I guess like when did you start? I'm sure were you a lifelong track guy?
I was. Unfortunately, I absolutely hated it growing up. But it was one of those things that supplemented football. So my pops played professionally, and he was kind of always the coach and making sure I was on the right track to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. So I started running track very early. Those are dog days. It's kind of like that. You talk about mat drills. That's how it is when you're a young kid and they tell you go run a 400 or an 800. It's not fun.
Brutal.
So, yeah, I spent a lot of time on that track, man.
I guess having a dad that played professionally, that kind of changes things with regards to like your body maintenance from a very young age, right? Like you're running track, and you said supplementing football. Like that's terminology you've heard from a young age. It sounds like hey, in the off season, we don't just continue football, we supplement football, we add on to our training.
Yeah, I think most kids, I was very athletic. So I played a number of sports: baseball, basketball, track. And then once I got to probably about middle school, I focused on just track and football for the most part. Knowing that, track, again, was a great supplement. And I excelled at track. I'm not going to say I was just as good at track as I was at football. I always placed nationally. So I had success doing it. I cannot say I enjoyed it, but it was a part of that journey, and it's something that bled over. So, I gave them my all, and it turned out okay for me.
I was telling somebody the other day that sometimes in life you got to do the things that you don't like to do because they're good for you. Like a lot of the things that you don't want to do are really, really good for you. They're probably the things that you, in fact, need to do. And a lot of people don't like running track, even when they're great at it. Like you were naturally gifted at running track, it sounds like, from a very young age. You obviously worked at it, but you didn't like doing it. But you continued to do it all the way up until you got into college football. Have you paid attention to what Georgia's doing track-wise? Have you seen some of the numbers these guys run?
I haven't, to be honest. I know that we have some burners that they've recruited over the last couple of years. I know like Arian Smith, the guy can get up and down the field. Cole is obviously a track guy coming out. I saw that we signed a couple of guys this year, but I haven't really paid much attention to it. I do know that the track program.
I think he froze. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Did I freeze or did you freeze?
I can hear you. Can't be able to turn everything else off.
My bad, dude. I'm back.
You good?
I don't know what happened. StreamYard's been bugging like shit lately. I know exactly where we were though, so I'm gonna do one of these.
Bet.
Dude, have you been paying attention to like these track times? Are you aware of anything these guys are running? Because some of these things are ridiculous lately.
Broadly speaking, but it's not something I follow, heavily at all. I don't really follow recruiting at all outside of, now knowing who's coming through the pipeline because of what we do. But obviously Georgia's had some burners even before me. You know, Malcolm was a track guy coming out of high school. At least he ran a little bit. I think B. Smith, Justin Scott Wesley, and then you get the Meat Cole and now Arian Smith. So, you know, we've always had a burner or two on the team.
It's honestly gotten scarier. For me, not just the skill guys have always been fast. Like you guys have always been able to run. Like I said, 2012, you're running 10.61. Guys nowadays at skill position, they're all running 10.2s, 10.8s. Like they're all running fast. But the scary thing for me, what's up?
Because you said that twice. 10.61. Don't short me. I ran 10.44 my junior year in high school.
Hey, 2/10 is a lot.
Yeah, it is
a lot. Bro, you worked your ass off for that 2/10. I'm good. I ain't gonna be upset with you if you correct me.
I just want to make sure we clarify. Yeah.
10.44. Okay. No, but dude, they got linebackers now, like Rayla Wilson from Florida. He ran 10.88 at like 230 pounds.
Yeah.
CJ Allen ran like sub 11 seconds at 230. It's stupid. You know, like you were a 5-star recruit. I think you were number 1, number 2 running back in the country coming out of high school. It's changed a lot. I mean, with the ranking system, it was a big deal back then, but it wasn't like a multi-million-dollar industry like it is now. Like it is a massive thing to be ranked a 5-star. It comes with a lot of attention, but it came with a lot of attention back then. I'm just curious, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, how did you handle it? And is there like some story that sticks out in your mind? Like, damn, this recruiting stuff is crazy.
I think, you know, it was, to your point, I mean, it was a big deal back then. I mean, the attention kind of changed for me overnight. So my sophomore year, my first game, I had a breakout game, first game on varsity. And then literally the next day, offers started rolling in. So I went from like 0 to 100 overnight. And it was a lot of attention. I will say my father, being that he had been through it. And if you know, obviously you don't know him from a can of paint, but drinking a little bit. But he's very disciplined, very structured. And so he put parameters around me. Like I wasn't allowed to just talk to the different reporters. Everybody had to send questions via email. He went through it to make sure my responses were appropriate. So, you know, he really inserted himself in between me and the coaches and, you know, the reporters and everybody to make sure, you know, I didn't expose myself unnecessarily. And so that's how we balanced it. And I didn't have a choice, you know, very strict household.
There are a couple of recruitments that go like that nowadays, and they're almost always former professional athletes' sons, right? You know, one that sticks out right now, too, right here in the state of Georgia recently, were Caleb Downs and Justice Haynes. From a media perspective, I don't hound a lot of kids anyways for recruiting, like in you know, interviews or whatever. But getting interview access to those individuals is like talking to an NFL like player. Like you had to go through like contacts, like you had to get through people and like, you know, talk to the young man about whatever his recruiting was. And honestly, I would probably handle it the same way. Nowadays, everything's multiplied tenfold, and one of which is NIL. And you've obviously become heavily involved. I guess, you know, if you were a high school football player today, 5-star, being Keith Marshall, 2023, you're getting NIL collectives and NIL conversations almost on the more regular basis than you even are football conversations at this point, it seems. How would you navigate this? And we'll talk about the Players Lounge here in a second, but you have an in-person, like real hands-on approach and knowledge about this subject. I'm curious, a player of your caliber, how would you have handled it?
It's very interesting, man. I oftentimes wonder what it would have been like knowing, like I said, my father, how involved he was. But I think ultimately, like at a certain point, you're kind of paying to play. You know, the school's got to pay to play. And so when we were coming out and get recruited, it was, hey, look at these facilities we have. Look at all these guys we're putting in the league. We got the best coaching staff. Now it's like, what are these kids making? And what can I, you know, be guaranteed? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I certainly think there's a lot of other challenges around NIL that need to be worked out, and I'm sure will be worked out. But I think it's a part of the decision. You know, it has to be, because you're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and you'd have to be a fool not to let that factor into where you go to school. And I know some people might not like that statement, but that's the reality. It's a business decision at the end of the day, one way or another. And now it's just more immediate in terms of the consequences and potential benefits.
You know, I think it kind of always was a business decision. I think that there was always, I mean, I'm well read on football in general. I love football. And I've always said on this channel, Vince Lombardi's biography, you know Vince Lombardi, right? Vince Lombardi's biography, I kid you not, it's thicker than the Bible. It's like 1,500 pages. And amongst those pages, it talks about him coaching college football in the early like 1920s. His career dates back all the way to like when Army and West Point were good at football, like that far back. Princeton was winning titles, dude. So like it was talking about this era of football where basically Creighton, like a small school then, had a lot of money. They would go around to schools like Army. They would watch practice. They would wait for kids to walk off the field, and they would pay them to come to Creighton.
Yeah.
Like, pay for play has been around football since football has been around. It's just now it's like in our face. And I don't know if there's like, first of all, there's no longer speed limits. You can go as fast as you want. When it used to, when it was illegal, you kind of had to tread lightly, right? If you didn't, they'd come get your ass. Nowadays, do what you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. One of the things that I think about is a little bit of a diversion, but you're 100% correct. I mean, it's all in your face. People focus on it. But if you think about like Arrivals or a lot of these sites that are around, the current recruits and stuff, they're hundreds of millions of dollars, businesses. And at the core of it was a student athlete, but we didn't think about it. Like, I thought it was awesome to get a profile on Rivals and then be able to show and I didn't realize that they're taking all the information when they do these and they're selling that. So I think it's awesome that the kids now can participate in that upside that they're helping to create. But you're 100% correct. I think right now it is the Wild Wild West is what everybody's calling it. I think the NCAA or at the federal level, somebody needs to come on and really explain what the rules are so that everybody knows how to navigate it. Because right now, as I'm sure you know, it's state to state. I mean, I talk to some schools.
Oh, dude.
It's completely different than it is in Texas,
And now in like Florida, you can negotiate your contract in high school with only state schools, though, right? With your NIL package, you can negotiate said contract, but anybody that comes outside of the state can't do it. This is a byproduct of college coaches basically nudging legislation. Like, it's gotten beyond nuts. It's gotten beyond the Wild Wild West. This is orchestrated crime at this point sometimes.
What's crazy to me is there's two NILs, right? You got your true marketing deals.
Your actual market brand, your name, image, and your likeness. They are actually trying to get ROI, business term, return on investment on what they are spending on you becoming an ambassador of their program. Correct. Continue.
100%. I think that's a small fraction of what's happening. I think the vast majority of what's happening is pay for play, which, is not supposed to be happening. And so I think at some point, again, the NCAA, they need to make it a federal, just make a blanket statement. I assume at some point it's going to come in-house and they're going to allow pay for play at the school level and not have to go through the collectives and all these other loopholes that we all know. It's like the collectives are connected to the school. It's not a secret. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
All right. We've been talking a lot about NIL without talking about the Players Lounge. Give the folks a rundown of what it is that the Players Lounge is and how I guess they could go about supporting the things that we got going on.
So we talked about it a little bit, I kind of threw a little hint in there, but when you look at, again, the traditional kind of media companies around collegiate sports, the Rivals, 247, all of those, they're great companies. They've obviously done a lot for the company, for the industry, but they have not compensated athletes. And, our business model is basically the athletes are at the core of it. We feel like they should get compensated. And then if you look at some of the media trends, and I'm sure you're familiar with these at the professional sports level, everybody talks of the rise of the new media. And to be honest, I'll put you into the new media, right? You're a former player. You don't have to go on one of these networks where you have to stay within these parameters. You can be much more authentic. You can be yourself, articulate how you feel about things. And so to me, that ethic, we're trying to bring that to collegiate sports. So on our platform, we engage with athletes. They do content. They have the opportunity to engage with their fans. It's a little bit more interactive than the traditional kind of just let me read an article. We have digital and in-person opportunities for fans to engage with athletes. But at the core of it, it's just like, hey, this is media. It's an engagement opportunity, and the kids get paid as opposed to the traditional offerings where they don't. And we think that leads to more authentic content. So that's what we're doing. We're super excited about it, man.
It certainly leads to unique content. Okay. I don't know if people know this, but like, you're the only media entity, if you guys want to classify yourself as that gets like one-on-ones with actual current athletes. I do not talk to current athletes. I'm not allowed to talk to current athletes. Okay. If you are at the University of Georgia and you have my phone number, you don't hear from me unless I am sending you something that you need, whether it be a photo or some type of, you ask me for some type of video clip that I tweeted or whatever that interaction is that you engage with me. I interact, I give back, end of conversation, because there is a journalistic code that I live by, right? This old media that you're talking about. I still live by that, despite the fact that I'm a new media person, despite the fact that I've come from an outside nature and I've immersed myself into this old media as a new media person. It's been a very difficult track for me, as you could imagine, with a lot of crossroads, and I'm still fighting over every single day. But yeah, from a player-led perspective, it is the new wave of media, right? Getting unique aspects of being able to listen to what the player's perspective is. Like, I can't tell you how many people have, whether it be social media or whether it be in person, have told me, Brooks, man, some of the best stuff I've ever watched you do is with you and Rylan and Tate, where I went over there and sat down with their podcast over there and with the Classic City Collective and had communications with actual football players in, outside football environment settings where we can just chop it up kind of like we're doing right now and actually talk football. And you guys get to do that over there with you, very unique access.
I think what's so dope about it, and I mean, we're not recreating the wheel. Like I said, it's being done at the professional sports level. And so I'm a big fan of I Am Athlete and the Pivot. I'm sure you watch those things. And so the kind of light bulb went off for me when I was watching Des Bryant. And obviously the media for the longest, they painted him as this bad boy diva. And I don't know the guy. So my entire perception of him was structured on what I'd seen on ESPN. I got a chance to listen to him tell his story, talk about his background and why he made some of the decisions that he made and what his mode of thinking was. And it completely changed the way I thought about him. And so I think the opportunity for athletes to do that humanizes them in the way, and kind of in the face of fans. And it just takes down some of those barriers. And so I'm all for it. And from a perspective of obviously some of the things that have happened at Georgia that have been tragic with the passing of, the girl that was the recruiting girl and then more, it was just very sad. If you look at how AJC reported on it, they're trying to get clicks. They're trying to, paint it in this way and that way. We want to make sure we don't do that. I'm not trying to go out and get clicks by creating controversy. None of that. We want to be very athlete centric, very pro athlete, position them in a good light. I think so far we've done that. As we scale and stuff, it's going to be a challenge to make sure we continue on that. But it's very important to me that we always represent athletes.
Representation is important, as is providing a platform to speak their own voice. Some of the coverage is oftentimes slanted. I understand there is this journalistic thought process, and it is the journalistic code. It is what they live by. It's what journalists live by, and to an extent, it's what I live by, Keith. I'm not going to lie to you. Where it's you can't just wear the G. You can't just be a promoting entity of the school. You have to there's checks and balances, right? That's the whole implementation of why journalism was created, to kind of call into question sometimes what may or may not be right. So I 100% understand the position of these things need to be covered from a non-biased perspective, from an outsider's perspective, right? But there are lines that we do not cross. There are certain things that we don't do, right? When you are reporting that Jalen Carter is facing speeding and racing charges, you should not go out on Twitter after he has resolved those and say, that's great. He could have been charged for vehicular homicide.
Yeah.
Those are two different things, right? The ability to report the news and the ability to make rash comments about the news. We can't be both, right? We got to be one or the other. So I 100% understand your stance. And again, places like the Players Lounge are where you can get that. And then if you want whatever you want, you can get it. I think one thing I've always said about this particular market, and it applies on the level across college sports, there are so many different avenues of coverage and content everywhere you go. If you're at Georgia, there are 7, 8, 9, 10 people that do, I guess, what I do, that do it really, really well. But I do a bunch of different things, and the Players Lounge does a bunch of different things. So there are a bunch of avenues for people to create content and relate to fans.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk football. You were a guy that played under the new OC, right? One of the many guys that played for him during his long time here. I guess what's your relationship with Coach Bobo during your times playing with him?
I enjoyed Coach Bobo, man. I had a great relationship with him. He's somebody that's extremely passionate, obviously extremely knowledgeable, and knows what the hell he's doing. He's proven that. So I'm excited that he's back in the driver's seat on the offensive side of the ball. I think he demands a lot of his players. You've obviously talked to Aaron, and they have an interesting relationship. I think he had an interesting relationship with all of the quarterbacks. But in terms of, one of the things
button pusher, is that what you're telling me? He's a button pusher?
Huh?
Is he a button pusher?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some guys need that, right? Though, I mean,
young guys need it. Old guys do not. Young guys need it. Old guys do not. Once you figure out who you are, I don't need my buttons pushed.
Yeah.
Once I've become the player that I am, I don't need you to push me every day. I don't need you to try to piss me off to play better.
And what's dope about that is I think some athletes, you're correct. But, everybody has different personality. Some people do need to be pushed. Some people, and I feel like Coach Bobo did a good job of that. But my favorite.
I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but I've been around Murray 4 or 5 times, around not just Murray, but all you friends. Y'all all give him a tremendous amount of shit. Y'all all push his buttons all the time. It seems like. Yes.
Dude, I love Aaron to death. We do get on him because he's just, some people are like that where, you can tell it kind of gets under your skin. It's kind of like when I don't know if you have siblings growing up, but you get into it with your siblings and your parents tell you, hey, if you show it pisses you off, they're going to keep doing it. it's kind of one of those deals where it's like, I know I can get to you, so I'm gonna play with you a little bit. But let me just on Bobo, the one thing that I respected the most about him in comparison with other coaches that I, have dealt with over my career is, he was truly a part of the team. It was always us. It wasn't, you guys and then me. So if we go out and we shit the bed versus whoever, when we come back in the locker room, he's like, I messed up. I didn't do a good enough job preparing you all. We have to do better. And that's to me, that's a big deal in order to get somebody to buy in and really believe in what you're saying. And I'm sure, Monken did a great job of that too, but that's always something I respected about Bobo. He was always, it's us. It's not you versus me.
It's funny that you say that. I know you've heard this. Do your 111th. Mm-hmm. Like do your job, right? Do your 111th. Mm-hmm. It's never once have I heard a coach say do your 112th, right? Like include himself into that. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about a coach who not only does that, but like leads conversation with that. Like, here's where I can get better. Now let's talk about the execution. I get sick and tired of listening to college football coaches get to the podium and talk about it's a matter of execution. Like, dude, why don't you just walk to the mic and say your players didn't play well today? Like, that's just what you did. If you're not smart enough to see it, then whatever. But I want to know more about, like, nerdy football question alert here. I know Monken's terminology was super NFL heavy. Like, it was lengthy. I mean, it was, right, formation, motion, concept, protection, play, tag, right? It could be as long as a paragraph sometimes. Bobo has been a lifelong college guy. College systems are not that.
Yeah.
But this system, I've been told, terminology is remaining the same. So I'm curious, Keith, when they were calling plays, was it college short or was it pro length?
Oh, that is an interesting question. So, I mean, for me, for whatever reason, it was pretty similar in college and in the league, right? Also, as a running back perspective, I only need to listen to a part of the play call.
Yeah, you're front-ended or back-ended. Yeah,
I check out. But I know, like, at Georgia, everything was kind of built around the structure, and then you build from that. And so at the base level, it was pretty simple, but then there was multiple kind of deviations that you could build on top of those things. I will say from a schematic standpoint, the concepts that we did in the league were the exact same as what we were doing in college. They were just termed differently.
Yes.
So I think I would imagine that's what he's done is he's just returned what he had always done traditionally.
Yeah. Typically, like, instead of saying slant and go, we just sluggo. Like it's everything just gets like everything gets squeezed. Instead of saying, pro right, we might call that Ricky. That's just how college offenses work for the fans sitting at home. They might not know what we're talking about.
Is he was very big, more so than what's my guy's name that came in my last year? He was with the Seahawks. What was his name?
Schottenheimer.
Yeah, so Bobo was big on, like, we used to always have those combo plays to where it's a check at the line of scrimmage depending on how the defense shows.
Call two in the huddle.
Yeah. So it was always like that with Bobo. So we always had kind of, and everybody would obviously know if I see this look, Aaron doesn't even need to make the check. We just know we're going to the other play.
That's neat. It's neat to hear that. I mean, the idea of two play calls is not unique. I mean, everyone kind of does that, but nowadays it's check with me, right? Nowadays, offensive coordinators are handling that so much from the box. They'll make guys hard count, and then they'll look straight to the sideline. That's what check with me is, and so many teams are doing it now. I've heard this about Bobo, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts as a guy that played for him. Monken, as a professional guy, because fans got to understand it, and football people got to understand there is a method of coordinating at the NFL level, and there is a thought process and a method of coordinating at the college level. College is much more about, like, who we got good players. How do we get these good players to execute? NFL, your players might change week to week, month to month, season to season. So it's about the system. We run the system. That's how Monken's thought process was. From my understanding, Bobo is much more of okay, these are my ingredients. Mm-hmm. Let's see what we can do. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Was that your impression of him as a coordinator when you played underneath him?
That is very interesting. I don't know that I've ever kind of sit down and conceptualize that because I was obviously there and we had what we had while I was there, so that's what we ran. But I will say Bobo definitely did a good job of creating mismatches and obviously highlighting certain players. And so obviously Todd was there. We always had a very strong running back room, and so we would certainly optimize for that. So that's an interesting concept. I think you went over me a little bit right there. I didn't have time to think about that. And I really don't have a good answer because I only experienced it one way. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, it makes total sense. Yeah. It's just something I've always wondered. Like, I see college systems, I call them pick and stick. They can be very simplistic in the sense that, like, all right, dude, This guy in the slot is way damn better than that guy covering him. So we're going to design 5 plays for that. And like, all right, we definitely have a mismatch here at guard over that 3 technique. So we're going to be a super inside zone heavy football team this week, and we're going to attack that. Whereas on the NFL level, like I said, Shanahan is who Shanahan is. Like, they're going to run the Shanahan offense. Like, that's what it is. Same thing for the
they're playing with X's and O's at the NFL level more so than they are at college, where college is like, what is your talent? I'm going to beat you with my talent.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. All right. Let's talk. This is a really tough one. I can't believe my producer put it in the list, but I'm going to ask it. 2012 SEC championship game, probably a little sore. You probably talked about it a ton over the last decade. I don't know if you might have been asked this question. Have you ever talked to Kirby about that game? Because he obviously coached on the defensive side.
I have not. No.
You should do that. You should be like, because like one thing I run into coaches now, because I played D2 football. So I played D2 football like 8 years ago, starting my career. So nowadays, those guys, if they were good football coaches in my conference, they're dudes now. Like, they're coaching big time football. Like, I think Will Hall's was the offensive coordinator at Tulane. He's got a head coaching job somewhere. So like, guys that I cross paths with are climbing. And the number one thing I always ask them if they coached against me, what was my eval? When you watch tape on me, what did you write about 56? What was the evaluation? So, Keith, you watched a lot of your own football, I would imagine. What was your eval? Strengths, weaknesses, go.
I would say so. My strength is I'm a one-cut, get-upfield guy. Obviously, speed. You put me in open space, I can take it to the house. I think my weakness was I ran. It's one of those things I didn't get a chance to feel like mature into. When you see guys early in their career, they're raw, and then you can tell they work on their craft. I feel like I didn't get a chance to do that as much because of injuries and such. But I used to run leaning forward a lot, and so if you hit me on my lower body, it wasn't that I wasn't strong. It was just gravity. I think I got ankle tackled a lot just because of how I ran. And a lot of that came from track. You come out the blocks and moving forward. So that was one of the things that was always top of mind to really focus on and get better at, which is getting my knees up and standing up taller when I was still having good body lean and good body position, but doing so in a way that I had my knees up so I wouldn't get tripped up.
So I was like a senior in high school going into college. Like I graduated in 13, so we had same arcs. Like I didn't get to watch you a lot because I was getting my ass beat on Saturdays. But I always remembered you. It's funny. We knew you were a track guy. I recall watching you. I've always had a scout's mind from day one even as a football player, because I'm a 6-foot center. Like I had to think differently, right? That's why I am who I am, football wise. But I always remembered you as a guy who I thought ran like he was in permanent A skip.
I can see that though. I know exactly what you're talking about. As many A steps as I did since I was 7 years old.
Yeah,
you're probably correct. You
looked like you were in permanent A skip with the chest over lean, high knee drive, and in that like almost like a 10-degree angle tilt. That's what it looked like to me as a football player. I
think you're wrong. I mean, even looking back at the career, man, I think one of the things that I don't want to say makes me sick, but I really don't feel like I got to scratch the surface of what I could have been because of injuries and just a number of other things. And so I think you're right. I think that was the reality. Is I definitely leaned too much, and I could have did a better job breaking some of those ankle tackles. But hey.
But dude, nowadays, like they would have just found ways to let you just get vertical because you were that electric with the ball in your hands. Like guys get drafted off that. There's John Ross is going to stay in the league for 15 years because he can run straight.
I mean, one thing you cannot teach is speed, and speed can break the game open at any point. And so, I even watch guys, and it's like, thinking in my head, if I had that right there, I would be gone. Even now when I watch football, I'm sure you went through it when you first get down, where it's like you can't take yourself out of, being on the field and whatever.
No, dude. I played like in front of like 250 people in shit football stadiums across the Southeast Georgia. No, we have a total different conception of what college football is. Yeah. No, absolutely not. When I got done with football, I wanted nothing to do with it. It's like none. I was getting ran down so hard, dude. I had to buy my own cleats my last 2 years of college. What you talking about?
Well,
a whole different vibe.
My apologies. I'll put it this way, because I didn't lead the game on my own terms. It took me a while before I could sit down and
I definitely left on my own terms. That like the game was over for me from a different level. I had reached the last plateau. That was it. But yeah, I couldn't imagine like feeling like it was like taken from you, right? You had an NFL stint, you had a run at it, but like it wasn't what you might have thought it would be. How has like mentally, and I got one more football question before we actually watch tape. Kirby and his staff do such a great job of talking about the psychology of a football player and the psychology of like what it takes to do this. But I'm interested about that psychology. When you feel, and I don't mean to speak for you, but you probably feel somewhere in your heart of hearts that football to an extent was taken from you. How do you conceptualize that as a fully grown man and a successful adult now? Like, you are a businessman now. But how have you gone about conceptualizing that?
It's been extremely hard. I mean, one of the most difficult, transitions of my life was having to walk away from sport. And so, give a little bit more context on my background. I started having like for my ACL in 7th grade. Then I had really bad tendonitis in high school. It was something that we always hid. And so, by the time I got to college, and I'm sure you understand this, there's a level in where you could just play free, right? Where you're just almost in flow state when you just make stuff as you feel. And then once your body starts to break down, you have to think about everything. It's like, I can't just plant right there. I can't just do that. That bleeds over into how you train. And I just felt like I didn't get to progress. And ultimately, the guys that I was in the room with at Georgia, talk about Todd, Sony, and Nick, what they've gone on to accomplish. Obviously, 2 of those guys are probably Hall of Fame caliber guys. Whether or not Todd had the longevity to do it, I think Nick will do it. And I feel like 100%, I was right there in that, I had that type of talent, and just to not get a chance to really show the world that, it hurts me. And I think it still drives me, to be honest. It's part of the reason why I'm still ambitious and I'm chasing different things and trying to figure out what is that next goalpost to work towards. So it's one of those things I've had to come to terms with. Like, hey, football's done. You did what you did. You got to move on. But I can't sit here and say it's like I'm all the way over it at all. I definitely sometimes like, I wish I could have done a little bit more. But that's life, so.
And I would imagine not only did it fuel you to turn the page and become as successful as you can be in your next venture as a business person, but I'm sure it went into what your next step was, or what your current step is, where you are currently at, and the doors that were open with NIL and the collective. I'm sure it led to your willingness, or want to rather, to get back involved around the sport of football with the Players Lounge. Right?
I would agree, man. It happened super organically. So I was at Emory, which is this GBS. I got my MBA, and I was expected to go I was going to management consulting, and this opportunity kind of just popped up. But to your point, it was the perfect fit. Like, I was in college. I understand the importance of being able to monetize your brand while you're hot, while you're healthy, while you got eyes on you. I think I have the business acumen to actually, make a stamp in this and help push this industry in a way that I think is more sustainable, and obviously takes care of the student athletes a little bit better. So it's kind of been that perfect marriage. And when you talk about startups, with every VC or investor they look for is, why are you the person to go and do this? Like, what's special about your background? I think I checked that box pretty easily. So
absolutely. The GDay event, before we send the YouTube audience out of here, how do we get access to see me and my boy right here, Keith, and Aaron Murray, and all the rest of the Georgia gentlemen and Letterman? How do we get access to the Players Lounge event that's going on GDay?
Creature Comforts in downtown Athens. It is our 2nd year doing so. We got the whole spot. We can hold up to, I think, 1,300 people. If you want to attend, it's actually free. All you got to do is go on our platform at theplayerslounge.io. You go sign up, create a free account, and then you can hit the Eventbrite link, sign up. First 500 signups get a free drink. I think we're at like 350 right now, so there's not too many spots left. But it's going to be a great day. Like you said, you'll be there. We'll be doing some film breakdown. We'll have Aaron, other Lettermen, some autograph opportunities, and it'll just be a whole bunch of dog fans hanging out and celebrating the back-to-back champs,
Just a bunch of dogs and this big fat head. All right, we're going to send the YouTube audience out. Me and Keith are about to sit here and watch some football. We've been talking about some nonsense. We've been doing what I call Square Boy interview. We out the squares. We finna go talk some football. If you want to come watch it, patreon.com/Brooks Austin. Both these links are in the bio. Come check us out. Come hang out with us April 15th and go watch them dogs on GDay. Keith, for the YouTube audience, I appreciate you being here, Patreon. We're going to keep rolling and shut up and grind that tape.